Welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're here today because we're tackling a concept you've probably heard a million times, but I guarantee you've rarely seen it broken down quite like this. We are mapping out the entire psychological journey of compound interest, right? It sounds like dry math, but it's actually an incredible emotional roller coaster. You see, compound interest isn't just one long, blurry waiting game. It's actually made up of 7 distinct levels, each with its own math and its own very unique psychological breaking point. And look, if you don't know exactly which level you're currently on, you risk doing what, honestly, about 90% of people do, pulling the plug right before the magic happens. Let's dive into this.
So picture this for a second. It's 11 p.m. on a random Tuesday night. You're sitting on your couch, you pull up your brokerage app for maybe the 100th time this month. You've been so disciplined. You've been contributing your $500 every single month without fail. But you stare at that tiny balance and this creeping thought just hits you. Is this even doing anything? Look, if you have ever felt that way, you are absolutely not being paranoid. The math from where you're sitting actually looks broken. It feels pointless. And that specific feeling of utter pointlessness, well, it's literally the single most expensive emotion in all of personal finance. It is the exact reason most people die without ever building real generation-changing wealth. To really wrap our heads around how this works, we need to introduce 2 completely normal people. Let's call them Casey and Jake. Now, they have identical starting points. At age 23, they both do the exact same smart thing. They set up a boring, automated transfer of $500 a month into a basic index fund. We're assuming an average historical return of roughly 10% here. No crazy crypto moonshots, no exhausting side hustles, just pure automated discipline. So at this very moment, Casey and Jake are financial twins. They are on the exact same path toward their futures. But let's see what actually happens after that first year. Welcome to level 1, what we call the 0 year. So Casey has put in $6,000 of her own hard-earned cash. She logs in, fully expecting to see her money hard at work for her, right? But the total growth? It's a measly $283. Her balance is barely over $6,200. $283. I mean, what is that? That's barely a decent grocery run these days. The math at this level feels like an absolute scam. Her money is basically acting like a polite piggy bank with social anxiety. It's just sitting there. And Jake? Well, he's staring at the exact same frustrating balance. This is the exact moment where the universe just seems to be laughing at your discipline. But here's the secret of what's actually happening beneath the surface. Casey and Jake aren't building wealth yet, not really. What they are doing is laying down the absolutely necessary base for something massive later on. The problem is, from ground level, all foundations just look like dirt. They all look exactly the same. A skyscraper's foundation and a shed's foundation both start as a muddy hole in the ground. But trust me, this dirt, it is incredibly essential. That invisible foundation building drags us kicking and screaming straight into level 2, the discouragement phase. This runs from roughly year 2 all the way to year 5, and man, it is psychologically brutal. By year 5, Casey finally has a balance around $38,000, which sounds okay, right? But wait, she put in $30,000 of that herself. Her actual growth over 5 long years of discipline is less than $9,000. If you break that down, it equates to about $10 a day in interest. $10. That's barely enough to buy a decent lunch anymore. Meanwhile, she's looking around and her friends are financing new trucks and moving into way bigger apartments. And this brings us to the ultimate breaking point. Right around year 4, Jake completely breaks. He looks at his hard-saved $30,000, does the mental math on that $10 a day, and basically decides this whole compound interest thing is a total lie cooked up by finance guys on Wall Street. So he cashes out. He uses all that money as a massive down payment on a brand new truck. And here's the tragedy. He is completely unaware that this single, perfectly rationalized decision is going to cost him $3 million over his lifetime. $3 million. Let that sink in. Now, you might be thinking Jake is just a bad apple, but his story isn't just a fun little anecdote. It is entirely backed up by hard data. There was a very famous study by Dalbar that tracked actual investor behavior over a 20-year period. What they found is mind-blowing. The average investor earned only 4.3% a year, while the S&P 500 itself actually returned 8.2% during that same time. So why this massive gaping wealth gap? It's precisely because millions of people pull a Jake. They look at those flat, boring early numbers, get totally discouraged, convince themselves the whole compounding thing is a myth, and they pull their money out right before it takes off. But Casey didn't quit. She kept her head down. And that brings us to the absolute light at the end of the tunnel.
Level 3, the first crossover. This is literally the psychological gatekeeper between those incredibly painful early years and the start of some serious, life-changing returns. The late, great Charlie Munger essentially hit the nail on the head when he said the first $100,000 is a real grind. You have to walk everywhere, eat nothing that wasn't bought with a coupon, you do whatever it takes, but you absolutely have to do it, because the second you cross that 100 grand mark, the entire game completely changes. Suddenly, it's like a rocket taking off. We see this massive compounding acceleration. Think about it. That first $100,000 took Casey about 10 grueling years of saving, but the second 100,000, that only takes her roughly 5 years, and the third 100,000, barely 3 years. Her account is finally large enough that it's generating its own serious returns, and those returns are now compounding on top of her initial contributions. By year 10, she's making $28 a day just in pure growth. Her money has officially stepped up and is working a part-time job for her. And then, by year 15, we officially hit level 4, the snowball phase. This is where it gets incredibly fun. Casey has contributed $90,000 total out of her own pocket, but the growth on that money is over $117,000. At this point, her investment account has literally become a better, far more efficient employee than she is. Think about it. It doesn't take PTO, it never complains, it doesn't need coffee breaks, it just shows up quietly every day and earns more passive money in a year than Casey is actively able to save from her own salary. Keep that momentum rolling into year 20 and it triggers level 5, the acceleration phase. The entire financial equation just flips upside down. Now, her own personal contributions only make up 1/3 of the total pie. 2/3 of her entire net worth is just pure, unadulterated growth. For every single dollar she puts in, the market is basically handing her 2 more. And let me tell you, this creates a profound psychological shift. Casey finally feels what true financial security is. If her car breaks down or the roof leaks, she doesn't panic. The anxiety is just gone. Which naturally leads us into level 6, the inflection point. This right here is exactly where the quiet millionaire is born. By year 25, Casey's annual growth alone is hitting almost $70,000 a year. Her investment account is now generating the equivalent of a median American full-time salary just by existing. No resume, no alarm clock, no agonizing Zoom meetings. Just 70 grand of pure growth in a single year. She probably doesn't look rich, she's likely still driving a super practical car, but she now has this incredible, undeniable, hidden financial leverage. Okay, let's take a pause and compare these completely divergent outcomes now that Casey and Jake are in their 50s. The median American has a retirement balance of right around $77,000. Jake, remember him? He started over with small contributions after his kids finally grew up, and he is sitting at a very painful $14,000. And Casey? She's sitting on $663,000. And here is the absolute secret, the magic trick to all of this. Casey isn't making a larger salary than Jake or the average American. She didn't win the lottery, she simply stayed on autopilot for 25 years. And that patience sets the stage for the grand finale. Let's dive into level 7, the exponential phase. This is where the math literally stops making sense to the human brain. By year 30, she crosses $1.13 million. By year 35, she's at $1.9 million. And by year 40, that simple, boring $500 monthly deposit has somehow turned into $3.16 million. Over her entire life, her total out-of-pocket contribution was just $240,000. But her account, it is worth over 13 times that amount. It's absolutely staggering. To really grasp the sheer shock value of level 7, we've got to look at the daily breakdown. Ready for this? At year 40, Casey's portfolio is earning $866 every single day. That is the equivalent of a highly paid weekend plumber shift happening completely in the background. It's happening while Casey sleeps, while she eats breakfast, or while she's just trying to figure out how to work her TV remote. Her money is massively out-earning most full-time working adults, and she doesn't have to lift a finger. So this brings us to a really crucial point, the ultimate cruelty of compounding. What if Casey had waited? If she had waited just 10 years to start, say starting at age 33 instead of 23, her final balance wouldn't be anywhere near $3.16 million. It would be just $1.13 million. Waiting just 10 short years literally costs a staggering $2 million. It absolutely proves without a shadow of a doubt that those frustrating, boring early years, the ones that feel completely pointless, are actually the most critical years you will ever have, simply because they provide the longest runway for growth.
So here is your ultimate psychological reframe to take away from all this. Building wealth isn't actually about outsmarting the market or trying to pick the perfect stock. It's a mental game. If you are at level 1 and the math looks tiny and pathetic, you aren't failing, you are just early. If you're at level 2 and you're feeling left behind by your friends who are buying flashy things, you're not missing out, you're just on a delay. And if you are lucky enough to be at level 3 or higher, do not touch it. The whole game is just having the incredible psychological endurance to ignore your account balance for 2 whole decades.
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a final, vital question to think about. Which level are you on right now? Seriously, take a second. Look at your own timeline. Assess exactly where you are on this incredible map we just went through. Are you in the dirt, just laying that essential foundation? Or are you finally starting to feel the momentum of the snowball? Wherever you are, find your level, recognize those tricky emotions that come with it, and whatever you do, stay securely in your seat. The math is just waiting to reward you. Thanks for joining me today, and keep compounding.